Like you've got such a crazy story, right? Like anyone that's involved in BJJ has heard your name, and I think the most prolific thing they go is, this guy's beaten the shit out of black belts since he was a white belt, since he was a blue belt. You're a purple belt. You're a runner-up in ADCC. How did this exposure to grappling, and let's start with your wrestling career, begin?
So I wrestled. I'm from Jersey, so our state sport is wrestling. High school wrestling in Jersey is like Texas, or is like Texas high school football. So, like I want to start by saying like I'm accustomed to big competitions. To having 5,000 to 10,000 people in the crowd at state tournaments and national tournaments and stuff like that. So like me going from like not a professional athlete to being a professional athlete is like typically people can't handle the pressure of competition and whatnot, but it kind of just came easy to me because I built that. I became accustomed to it throughout wrestling in Jersey. So I wrestled since I was about 12 years old all the way through till freshman year in college. I did a year Division III, and I had some success. Like I was ranked nationally. I think I was like ranked like 12th in the country as a freshman, but never placed or anything like that. But what I did do is keep practicing. Like, although I was done wrestling in college per se, but I would still go to local high school and local community colleges after my freshman year in a Division III school to like practice and just kind of keep growing. But I really found jujitsu through a bouncing job I was doing. Like I was at a college bar, a place called Landmark in Glassboro, and I was bouncing with the bouncers, and the talk of like who's tougher comes up, and a few of the guys trained jiu-jitsu, and they're like, dude, but like your wrestling is pretty much inadequate compared to my jiu-jitsu. So I had to take them up on the offer, and I pulled into a practice one day, and there was like some purple belts there, and I literally just beat the shit out of everybody. Like, I mean, granted, it wasn't a world-class athlete, so it was just regular like hobbyist training jiu-jitsu. But
So
I
you were
mean, I
still
was able to
crushing
like,
guys, even though you had no actual BJJ experience. You just went in with a
yeah,
wrestling
no BJ
background.
experience. I just do like keep my head and my neck protected and try to pass guard, take the back. Pretty much, I could take everybody's back right
With no
away, and
training?
I didn't know how to do like rear naked chokes and stuff. But like getting to the back was regular for me. That's my job in wrestling was to take down, get to the back,
Right.
and so that came really really easy to me, like getting to people's backs. And there's something to be said like for my athleticism and stuff. Like not everybody is able to move how I move. So like at a heavyweight weight class, like before I even really knew jujitsu, I could just out athlete most of these guys. So I'm not talking about the guys that are like, winning ADCC, but like just most of the black belts that like don't train every day and are just kind of obvious. That was like, I was just more athletic than them. So regular people dealing with the pressure of like a superior athlete, it's kind of hard for them. So I started training jits, and like I would hop around a couple different schools in South Jersey. Like I was pretty much trying to find a room that like was hard for me, because like I went to like 5 different schools, and it was kind of the same thing. I just hopped in there, and it was too easy. Like I take these guys back, I choke them, and like I didn't know anything, and like
Was this
people
all
just
no
weren't
gi, or
accustomed
was
to
there?
dealing with me, so I wasn't as like I wasn't as welcome, I guess, in like everybody's gym, because they just had this big guy smashing people, and that's all I was kind of accustomed to. So
Were these
I
schools you
eventually.
were these schools you were
What
going
was
to?
that?
Was your first exposure to jujitsu no gi, or were you crushing guys also in a gi? Because it's a
No,
with
no,
a gi
no gi only. I
it's
never
different.
really.
Okay,
Yeah, I never really put the gi on. Like once I signed up at a school, so my first school I signed up at was called South Jersey BJJ. They're mainly gi oriented and built for hobbyists. So I put the gi on a couple times, and like I could still manage because I'm an athlete, but it wasn't as fun for me as no gi. So I literally just started showing up to the gi classes in no gi uniforms, and they just kind of let me slide.
just like fuck
So
it.
yeah, that kind of started the trend at that school at least. And yeah, dude. So South Jersey BJJ, the guy that owns it is a black belt under Ricardo Almeida, and Ricardo Almeida is a Renzo Gracie black belt. So I kind of luckily I fell into the Renzo Gracie Association. Um, I want to say my second week of jiu-jitsu, I had signed up for our first competition. It was just like a grappling industries with some random black belts and stuff in there. And I did good, man. I subbed everybody. I subbed most of the guys. I think I ran up the score that was like 80 something points to 0.
Jesus
And granted,
Christmas.
this is just like regular black belts. These aren't guys that are winning the trials or anything like that. But it just like I did things like that, small competitions to help build my confidence.
So wait, 2 weeks into jiu-jitsu, you're just training. I mean, how before you're crushing these black belts? I mean, you're glossing over that. That's a pretty spectacular fucking feat, man. I mean, like, people train 10, 15 years, and even like the most generic black belt, for the average person, they're going to crush 99% of the guys on the street. But then you've got this crazy athleticism that comes in. And do you feel like that was really, your athleticism really helped you dominate a lot of the guys at that level in that tournament? Because you only had, a couple weeks of jiu-jitsu when you first competed.
Yeah, my first competition was like the weekend after my second week of jiu-jitsu. So
insane.
2 weeks in the books of training, and I just smashed everybody, a couple black belts and brown belts in there. And yeah, I mean, definitely my athleticism is what I relied on and what kind of shot me, further ahead of most people. And then, like once I started training at Renzo Gracie, I want to say maybe my second or third month into jiu-jitsu, I started going up to train with John Danaher a couple times a week. Once I got in that room consistently, I really kind of to understand where my holes were, because we do a lot of positional training, things from like, I'll start with somebody mounted on me. I'll start with people on my back and scenarios like that, to where practice was really difficult and hard because I had to focus on not using my athleticism, but using technical variations to escape these tricky kind of scenarios in practice. So definitely, once I started training up at Renzo's, it allowed me to kind of see where I'm having issues with, and then I would kind of go really hard at Renzo's, and then I'd go back to South Jersey and see how I'm doing here, see see how I'm growing. I think a good way to track your progress is go with the guys that are better than you, and then once you've done that training, a couple days later, go with guys you usually train with that are kind of your more your level, and see how it's a good way to track like that. Just have different variations of practice partners and whatnot.